Everybody, hello. I am Anna Bryce, the VP of Programming at the AMA Phoenix, and welcome. We are very happy to have you. And I just would like to do a couple of quick housekeeping notes before I introduce our speaker. We will be, I'm going to start with this while I'm thinking about it because it's already February. And we will be starting very soon to collect AMA Spectrum Award submissions. So everybody, please start thinking about your best 2021 Spectrum Award submissions because we will start collecting them soon. And May 18th, Wednesday, is the date of Spectrum this year. And we are having it again where we had it the last time, which feels like forever ago, at Papago Golf Club. So it was a great time. And I do want to, since we're talking about Spectrum, I want to acknowledge the Spectrum winners who are here on the webinar today. So we have Lisa and Kara from Shasta Pools, and Elise Meyer from Prism Global Marketing Solutions, Bree Gibson, who is also our website person for the AMA Phoenix from Acre Inc., Leo and Melissa from Calling Media, and Brittany from Ideas Collide. So we have a nice crowd of Spectrum winners that are joining us today. So again, get your submissions ready. And you will be getting an email soon to start submitting. And then I do want to thank our sponsors, because without our sponsors, none of this is possible. And again, I would like to acknowledge Prism Global Marketing Solutions, because I believe Elise is on the line here. And of course, from Financial Potion, Taylor Wellman, who is our host and always our host for webinars. If you have any video needs, please consider giving Taylor a call. And then also would like to thank our board members. We have a great group of people, hardworking people who, again, none of this is possible. And once we get back to live again, you will get to meet with our board members. And if you come to Spectrum, you'll get to meet with our board members. So please keep an ear and an eye out for all of our events and when we go back live, and in particular, May 18th, which is the Spectrum Awards. And I would like to get right into introducing our terrific speaker. Every time we have digital marketing questions, we go to Chris Sietsema for the answer. He has been a speaker for us a couple of times, although it's been ages now since we've seen him in person. But Chris, we're really thrilled to have you once again speaking on this topic, because it's something that we all need to know, preparing for life without cookies. Chris has had a wide range of experience in digital marketing, both on the agency side and on the corporate side, and also now in his current role on the consultancy side of things. And what Chris does is he helps his clients make sense of marketing data, which is something we all want to do. Make sense from our marketing data, or of our marketing data. So without any further delay, Chris, welcome, and we are thrilled to have you here today.
I'm thrilled to be here with you, Anna.
Thank you.
It's great to see everybody and see all the names on the screen there. So thank you very much for attending. This is an interesting topic for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's kind of a moving target. The laws are changing, the rules are changing as we speak. It's an interesting confluence between marketing and technology and the law, three of my favorite topics. And not everybody has got it figured out yet, including Google. And we'll talk about what they've been trying to work on, what's in operation right now, and what we can expect in the year or so to come. Before we jump into the detail here, I did want to provide you this link, teach2fishdigital.com/AMAPHX. This is going to give you a link to this deck, as well as a checklist that I provided for you. This link will be provided once again toward the tail end of this presentation. So if you don't have time to write it down straight away, teach2fishdigital.com/AMAPHX, it'll come back. Okay.
And I can also make sure that I send out an email to everybody that I sent this link to for the webinar. So
beautiful.
As
That's
a backup.
Great. Yep. So yeah, so the link's going to take you to a little box.com account. I'll let you jot that down real quick. teach2fishdigital.com/AMAPHX. And off we go. These are some clients that I work with, pretty much all of them in the past few months, majority of them in the past few days. For these folks, what I do is I provide analytics and reporting, configuration of analytics, including Google Analytics 4, Google Tag Manager, and then a lot of audit work as well in the analytics space. The agenda for today, we're going to talk just very basics. What is a cookie? What are we talking about when we say third-party cookies, first-party cookies, all those different types of things? We're also going to walk through some of the updates, regulations, not only here in the US, but internationally, specifically in the European Union, that are impacting some of the moves and decisions that are being made around this topic. And then we're going to try and offer up some solutions. And as I stated from the start, this is a kind of a moving target with respect to how we are going to be able to react to some of this. But there are some concrete solutions we can rely upon right now. Now, some of the things we're going to talk about with respect to tracking and targeting and digital media and advertising are vehicles and channels that we rely upon right now. And when anytime we rely upon something and someone tells us that it's going away or you're not going to be able to do it, we typically have a sad negative disposition, right? However, I do want you, as we walk through this, to view this not only as a marketer, but as a consumer, because I'm of the belief that all of these changes are happening for a good reason. And there's actually going to be a positive result, not only from a consumer privacy perspective, but also from a marketing perspective. As we'll talk about, a number of the changes that we're being forced, our hands are being forced a bit here, are actually going to provide us with a reason to kind of get our acts together from a data governance and an organization standpoint. So that's all a good thing. Okay. Now, as I stated, some of this is going to be a little bit legal. And I wanted to provide you just a word of warning that I am not an attorney, nor is Gregory Peck. But so just kind of take what I'm telling you as some thoughts to think about, but definitely conduct your own research in terms of what the next best steps are for you and for your organization. Okay. What is a cookie? Good question. To answer this question, let's go back to the dawn of the internet, when all of website design kind of looked like this with nasty wood paneling and hyper green letters. The cookie was actually invented or first programmed by a guy named Lou Montulli, and he developed the Lynx browser in 1991. And not too much later, he created a little piece of code that stored data about people who visited websites, which he called the cookie. And he did it for Netscape, the Netscape browser. Some of you are old enough to remember that. Now, as time went on, the purpose of the cookie kind of changed a little bit. So Lou first developed it to remember users who returned to a website so they could easily remember their passwords, or it would keep the items that they placed in their shopping cart so they wouldn't have to start from scratch, okay? The important thing to note about cookies is that consent was never really a key ingredient, ever. Now, since this time, I think Lou is probably sitting in his mansion somewhere in Silicon Valley, and he's done some interviews about this particular technology and his career and so on. And he's expressed two major regrets. One is that the cookie is being utilized for purposes other than which it was originally intended. And I'll explain more about that in a second. The second major regret was his hairstyle back in 1991. Okay, we've all made mistakes, and look at him. He still got it, which is more than some of us can say. Internet activity, that's where the cookie is being utilized most now, as well as on the websites that we visit. And this is where we've got issues. This is where some of the government regulations are coming into play. Specifically, there are huge behemoth corporations You know them well, Google, Facebook, Amazon. They are essentially utilizing cookies and third-party cookies specifically to track and monitor our behavior on the web and build profiles that enable us as marketers to reach our consumers and target them and build out profiles about them and basically gather information which we really don't have the rights to gather, which is the problem. That's the crux. Let me give you an example. If you go to adsettings.google.com, you'll see a page that looks like this. And if you dig in a little bit, you'll see all these different topics. Here's what they look like. Now, this is actually for me. These are all the sites that I visited. Here's my age range, obviously my gender, all the different things like air travel. We talked about baseball earlier. Apparently I like baked goods and business productivity software. And this is just A through C, right? A through Z is just this laundry list of all these topics that Google has collected about me based upon the websites that I visited on the Chrome browser and all the behavior that I've exhibited while utilizing that browser. It's kind of insane and a little bit spooky from a consumer perspective, okay? Now, Google's allowed to do this because at some point, probably when I signed up for my Gmail account or some Google account, I probably signed on the dotted line. It kind of looked like the contract in Willy Wonka and said, yes, sure, grab my data, go for it, that's fine. Unknowingly so, right? I don't know that I actually gave consent, but I probably did when I checked a box at some point when I signed up for a Google account. And so have you, when you sign up for your Google account and your LinkedIn account and your Facebook account. So technically these corporations have the rights to build out profiles for us because at some point when we created an account, we basically checked a box that said, yeah, go ahead. But now there are regulations that are coming through that are basically requiring that we gather consent as marketers, okay? Before we jump into those regulations, I want to talk a little bit about how cookies work, and I'm going to do it two ways, okay? This is how cookies work, Act 1, all right? Let's say day one, you have a website. People come to that website, here they are. You track those folks when they come to the website through a tool like Google Analytics, okay? Now what Google Analytics is doing is it's actually placing a cookie. And everybody who accesses the website has a cookie placed on them by Google Analytics. And let's say day two comes around and some of those people come back to your website. Now, oh, look, I see some folks with a cookie and other folks without one. Those who have a cookie placed by Google Analytics originally, those are our returning visitors. Those who do not have that cookie placed already, well, those must be first time or new visitors, right? So Google Analytics utilizes cookies this way to kind of tell between new and returning visitors. So when you look in your analytics reports and tell the difference between new and returning, that's how that works. It's all based upon cookies, okay? And this is a first party cookie. So we don't really have to worry about this going away. Analytics isn't going anywhere. But just to explain this a little bit further, a first party cookie, we've got your brand, your consumer, and in this case, your brand is placing the cookie for the consumer who is visiting your website. And these things are done with analytics and for tracking passcodes and remembering your password and your user ID and what's in your shopping cart. And all that's happening right now. And that was Lou Montulli's original intent, right? First party cookies, okay? So that's one type of cookie. Let's talk about how cookies work, Act 2. Let's say we've got a website. People come to that website, and on that website, we have some tracking code for both Google Ads and AdRoll. And we are building a website or a display audience so we can remarket to these people just in case they leave. And so these tools here are being utilized to place cookies on these folks who visit our website. So if they come to our website and they leave, we have the ability now through these advertising networks like Google Ads and AdRoll to remarket to them, to show a display ad, for example, or to bid up our paid search ad just for those folks who have been to our website before. Okay, that's how cookies are working right now. Day two comes around, and they're not going to our website on day two. They're just going to the internet, someplace on the internet, any number of the millions of websites on the web. Here they come back. Here's all the people that are accessing all the different websites. And you'll notice that some of those people have cookies and some don't. Well, for those that do have cookies, those networks that we utilize to place these cookies before are detecting those cookies there. And these are the folks that we are going to deliver advertising to. This is remarketing. This is retargeting. These are the basic display advertising programs that we utilize now that rely upon cookies, okay? And this is a third-party cookie, not because it was placed by us, but because it was employed out there on the interwebs, okay? That's the biggest difference. We'll explain the difference between first and third-party cookies again, just to make sure it's abundantly clear. Now, there are a number of different third-party cookies in play. Some of these you're very familiar with. Some of them you might not have known that are out there, and you'll see why some of these are a little bit suspect in terms of their legitimacy from a privacy and consumer protection standpoint. Okay, so the first example is that remarketing or retargeting cookie. Okay, so people are on our website and they leave. And before they leave, we have a little tag on our site that places a cookie. And a cookie, again, is just a little piece of code that tracks people as they move around on the web or recognizes them when they come back to our website, et cetera, okay? And they leave for the internet. And any one number of sites within our retargeting network can show our ads to them so we can get them back to our website when they're visiting others' websites. Hey, you've seen this before, come on back. You put that pair of shoes in your shopping cart, come back and complete your purchase, et cetera, et cetera. You've all seen those ads, okay? That's how that works. So this intent is really for visitor retention. People leave, we want to retain them. We're bringing that visitor back, okay? Meanwhile, some of these sites out there on the advertising networks that we rely upon might have other ads that aren't necessarily retargeting, but they're just like awareness ads. They're display ads. They're trying to generate traffic and awareness for your brand. And sometimes those ads work really well in terms of driving clicks, other times not so much. But many of these ads have cookies or tags that they're placing to measure not the folks that clicked on the ad, but the folks that saw the ad. And that might sound new to some of you, but there are ads out there when you visit the different site and you see ads. Some of those ads are actually monitoring your behavior just to determine not whether you clicked it, but whether you saw it. Okay, and some of that view through activity is utilized to measure the efficacy of those ads. Because some of us on the media side want to say, hey, yeah, you know what, we had our ads out there and maybe we only got X amount of clicks, but you know what, those who saw the ad actually came back through organic search, or they came directly to the website, or they came via an email or through a Facebook post or whatever. But we can give these ads credit because they served up an impression, or they were visible by the audience and perhaps had some impact in encouraging their behavior to come to the brand website. Okay, so this is view through tracking. Maybe this is new to some of you. Some of you have been doing this for a long time. I've seen this before, but that's a third-party cookie as well. Now, meanwhile, there's still other tags on these websites that might be placed like Facebook or Amazon or some of these other gigantic networks that basically have these tags placed on these sites just to monitor our behavior. If you Google Facebook cookie policy, you can go right to their cookie policy and says, yeah, we're monitoring your behavior when you are on the internet. And we're building a profile and watching what you're doing and seeing what sites you go to, what articles you read, to build a profile so we can serve our advertising and our marketers better, okay? And they're building a profile. That's all those tags are doing. So this is profile building. So all of this technology would constitute third-party cookies. In other words, all of this will be going away, okay? And so we've got to find alternatives to this over time, right? And there might be some debates about whether or not this is going away. The way that this is designed right now has to change based upon what Google is doing, what Apple's already done, what Safari's already done. We're going to get into more of that in a second, okay? So just to explain third-party cookies a little bit more in detail, again, someone comes to a website, not your website, but just site XYZ, some site on an advertising network out there someplace, and people come to that site and there is a third party involved, okay? And in this case, it's Meta or Facebook or Instagram or whatever you want to call this behemoth brand. It's the Zuckerberg, okay? And so when there is code for Meta placed by Mark Zuckerberg on this site, it's doing the monitoring. So it's a third party that's playing the role here. So the cookie is not placed by the site you're visiting, it's placed by a third party, and it's building that profile to monitor your behavior as you go across the internet, and again, to build out that profile for your marketing, okay? So just to explain in plain English, the difference between first-party cookies and third-party cookies. First-party cookies are placed and employed by the website you visit. So if someone comes to your website, you can still place cookies and monitor their behavior and do that as long as you get consent and permission, which we'll talk about more in a second. And then there are third-party cookies. These are either placed or employed by an entity other than the website you visit, okay? They're placed or employed by an entity other than the website you visit, and these will be going away. Well, how come? Because Google said so. Almost 2 years to the day, I'm looking at my calendar. No, it's over that, more than 2 years to the day, almost 25 months to the day. They came out with a blog post on their Chrome blog that said, hey, we plan to phase out support for third-party cookies in Chrome, and nobody really reacted to it. Some of us really kind of started to freak out a little bit because we rely upon it so much. And then once they got some feedback about that, they actually slowed some things down a little bit. So back in June of last year, they said, oh, hold the phone. We're probably going to make this update to the end of third-party cookies sometime in 2023. When that date is, we don't know. They just said starting in mid-2023, we're going to phase out support of third-party cookies completely over a 3-month period, okay? So it's on its way. Third-party cookies will be deprecated, and we won't be able to utilize them anymore for visitors who access the Chrome browser. Now, the interesting thing is Safari already did this. Firefox kind of already did this. You can adjust your settings, but for the most part, you can't really utilize cross-site tracking or third-party cookies right now on these browsers at all. In fact, Safari, I think it was a year or two ago, came out with this intelligent tracking prevention setting, or the ITP, which basically allows as a default you to just track or stop third-party cookies from tracking you across the web. Okay, so this essentially isn't even working right now in Safari, so it's not like we're missing too much. It's primarily with Chrome that's the crux of what we're talking about here. Now, in terms of the market share for different browsers, it's pretty split. Now, this, just so we're clear here, this is all devices. If this bar chart here showed just desktops, the blue for Chrome would be much bigger. If it showed devices for just, or Chrome, or browsers, I should say, for just mobile, the green for Safari or iPhone would be much bigger. But this is kind of a mixture of both desktop and mobile devices for all the different browsers. So Chrome is about 50% of the US market share. And that's data from just December 2021. And I won't go too much into this, but there are some different companies and brands that are coming out with new browsers and new search providers. So some of you who utilize your Google Analytics will probably recognize DuckDuckGo. It's like a private search engine. It's like Google, but a Google that doesn't track you. And Brave doesn't even have any of this market share here even. It's like a fingernail width of the market share that it has, but it's basically a browser, and there's several of them out there, a browser that does not track you. It's all private. So they don't keep tabs, they don't use cookies, none of that happens. And all of this is really kind of tied into with some of the updates that have been made to iOS 14 and 15. You guys, anybody who uses an iPhone have seen this little bug right here, or the Ask app not to track. So about a year and a half ago, maybe a little bit more, the iOS operating system, the Apple operating system, updated its settings to basically ensure that visitors are allowing applications that they use to track their behavior on those devices. And it really affects Facebook, right? Because they're basically looking at all your different behaviors on your phone, on the websites you visit, the apps you play with, etc. Okay. So I don't want to go too in detail here on all the changes that were made with iOS 14, but essentially they basically upped their privacy game. And the main thing that they did is they allow users of the iOS or iPhones to control how apps track them. Pretty much every single app that I utilize and have utilized had that little Ask app not to track bug when I started to use it and when I updated my iOS. You guys probably saw these about a year and a half ago as well. And Facebook, bless their hearts, flipped out. And they had a very kind of negative response to what Apple was doing, because it essentially hurt their business model. They could no longer kind of peek over our shoulders and monitor all the apps and websites that we're tracking. So they had a very mature response to all this. And an ironic twist of fate, one of the largest technology companies in the world bought a full page ad in the New York Times, like the print version, to basically complain and say that Apple wasn't playing fair. When in my opinion, Facebook really hasn't been playing fair the entire time. But that's neither here nor there. All of this is changing primarily because the law is changing. So Google Chrome is removing cookies. iOS devices are removing or are allowing people to have more control over the apps that track their behavior. And the reason for that is government regulations. Now, here's where I'm going to remind you that I'm not a lawyer, okay? The two major pieces of government regulations are happening in Europe, and they happen next door in California, okay? And all that they're really doing essentially is they're giving consumers more control over the data that brands have about them and for them. And they're requiring consent in the case of GDPR or the European law. So they allow us to opt out of targeted ads. We can access our own data. We can correct our data, and we can politely ask the brands who have data about us just to delete it completely. And they have to do it under the order of the law, okay? So again, I don't want to get too crazy with this here because I'm not an attorney, but let's talk quickly about GDPR. There are 7, count them, 7 major principles of GDPR. So if your business does any work in the European Union, this is for you. Now, there's a lot of bullets here, and I'm not a fan of bullet-heavy slides. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you this slide. It's available in that link I provided earlier, but let's just translate this down to something a little bit more meaningful, shall we? There we go. That's better. So really, to translate what GDPR is saying, it's saying get consent. When someone accesses your website, your app, you have to get consent for you to track them, even for analytics, okay? You have to use their data only for the reasons specified. So if you gather their email address, you got to tell them why you need their email address. Gather their phone number, why. And then gather only what you need. So you can't just start asking for and requiring contact fields that you really don't need. You've got to keep those records fresh. So if someone changes their email address, you've got to take that email address off and replace it and allow them to update their data very easily and really kind of have a good governance over all of your customer data. You've got to discard older records and you've got to keep it secure. And then they also recommend that you have some person in your organization, on your staff, that is basically the key master, some person or group of people in your org that have control over all the customer data, have the keys essentially. Now, why do we care if we're in Phoenix, Arizona, and we're not necessarily doing business in Europe? Well, just like everything else European, things kind of head this way. Every trend in food, fashion, cinema, et cetera, is always headed this way, right? So we kind of have to brace ourselves for these kinds of regulations coming this way as well. And guess what? They kind of already have in California. Now, back on this consent piece right here, you've probably seen several websites that offer up a little consent bug or little pop-up that comes up and says, hey, would you like to accept cookies? Here you are, or we use cookies, hit yes to accept, et cetera, et cetera. And so do you have to use this right now if you do business in the European Union? Yes. Do you have to do this right now if you don't do business in the European Union? Not really. Should you? Maybe. Just kind of an act as transparency and goodwill, and the fact that you're showing you actually care about consumer privacy. It's probably not a bad move. There are several consent platforms out there. Do I have a recommendation for you? No, I do not. I definitely recommend that you kind of check these out and learn about which one's going to work for you. Again, I don't think that those of us who are doing business only in the state of Arizona or only in the Phoenix Metro or only in the United States have to get one of these right now. But I would definitely start to study them now. That this might be coming down the pike sooner than later in terms of domestic laws and regulations that require some of these consent platforms to be in use. In terms of the consent that we provide, many of these tools like OneTrust and Osano, they provide you kind of levels for the different cookies that you can accept as a consumer of that brand, as a consumer of the content on the various websites where these platforms exist. So essential cookies are simply turned on. The next level up is analytics cookies. The next level up is personalization cookies. And the fourth level is targeting. And those are the ones that we're doing with retargeting and Facebook profile building and all those different types of things. So many of these platforms, is what I'm getting at, is allow you to kind of say, yeah, you can track my analytics, but I don't want any targeting, right? So you as the user have control over all this. Again, I'm going to repeat, I'm not an attorney, but there have been two consent approaches that I've seen when I kind of roam the internet and see these different tools in play. One is the very explicit, hi, we use cookies. Please click this button to allow all. You've got to click the button to move on, right? Another one is just FYI, we use cookies. So if you're going to use this website, if you're going to read our content, if you're going to consume our information, you're going to be tracked. There's no button, there's no checkbox. It's just a bit of a warning, kind of a transparency update, and that's it. You choose which one is best for you. There's a number of different websites out there that use one of the two. And there's also technologies out there that you can add to your website that kind of auto detect which kind of warning you need to utilize, whether this person is in the European Union or not, etc. Now, one of the things with this is if they're turning off some of these tracking cookies, that means that we're not going to be able to track everybody who comes to our website, right? Yes, that's absolutely true. And so is that a bad thing? Not necessarily, because the truth is we don't track everybody who comes to our website now. So if you utilize Google Analytics, for example, the chances that you're tracking 100% of the people that come to your website is zero. You're not tracking everybody. People are utilizing Safari or some of these other tools or some of these other browsers, or maybe they've turned tracking off on their own browsers if they know what settings to adjust within their own Chrome or Safari or Edge browser, et cetera, et cetera. So we rely upon what's called data sampling. What's data sampling? So let's say among this audience, all the green people allowed tracking, all the orange people didn't, right? So when we analyze our data, these orange folks aren't available to analyze. And so what do? We extrapolate. We take a sample and we extrapolate based upon these folks who are remaining their behavior. And we look at how they're behaving, and we basically make assumptions that, all right, a good chunk of the audience is behaving this way, and thus everybody must be behaving this way. Google Analytics does this right now. So if you are a Google Analytics user, whether it's Universal Analytics or GA4, Google Analytics 4, you are relying upon sampling right now. If you've got a Google Ads campaign and you ever wondered, how come the ads clicks are always higher than what I'm seeing in Google Analytics? That's why, right? We're not tracking everybody, but that's okay because we can use data sampling, also known as machine learning, okay? Let's talk quickly about CCPA, the California Privacy Act, California Consumer Privacy Act, okay? So this is basically applies to any business who does business with consumers in California. And it's not as strict as GDPR, but there are a few important bullets to know, okay? So it only applies to businesses that do 25 million in revenue per year, or big data companies with over 50,000 records and data brokers. And if this would apply to you, then you must have some protocol in place to allow your consumers to view their data, to block the sale of their data, and to delete their data from your records. That's what CCPA is, okay? And it went into effect back in early 2020. So it's been about 2 years going now, okay? And so one question is, well, when we say data, what does that mean? Does that mean like an email address? Does that mean a phone number? According to CCPA, any data collected by cookies is also deemed personal information. So any pages that they visited, any data that you're gathering to build any profile data, that all applies, okay? So this next slide is more of a guide for you. I'm not going to read this word for word, but if you do business with people in California, here's your checklist. And if those 3 rules back here apply to you in terms of $25 million in revenue, or your data broker, you've got 50,000 records on your list, here's your checklist, okay? And maybe just hang on to this just in case you're not there yet, but you will be soon, okay? And California is not the only state with some kind of consumer privacy policy law. Virginia has law. Colorado, that's Colorado, by the way. Colorado has a law. And then there are other states like Oklahoma, the state of Washington, and Florida that have recently had these types of laws on the books, or they're actively talking about them right now. Has Arizona talked about this? No, I think Arizona's got some other problems in their state legislature they need to figure out first before they jump on this. But I would suspect that they will be on this train soon. Okay. So it's important to kind of monitor what folks are doing around us. So we can kind of predict what's headed our way. All right. Now, just to kind of play it very simple, let's kind of talk about the different types of advertising, digital advertising that rely on cookies now, and maybe some that don't, just to kind of explain what is still on the table and what is going away with the deprecation of third-party cookies sometime in 2023 from the Chrome browser and all these new laws that are coming into play. Okay. So one type is visit tagging. We talked about that earlier, and that's where somebody comes to your website, they leave your website, but you can retarget messages to them. Is that going away? Yes, we won't be able to do that probably a year and a half from now. Okay. There's another type in which you can work with like Facebook or Google to upload a list. Let's say you have a customer record, or a list of customer records, I should say, and you want to upload your email list and say, hey, Facebook, here's my email contacts. Match this up with your records over there at Facebook. I want to target to these folks. Will you be able to do this? Yeah, there's nothing that says you can't. That doesn't rely upon third-party cookies. There might be some other privacy policies that come into play from a government regulation standpoint that limit that a bit over time. But right now, that's fair game. Okay. There's this other idea that brands like YouTube and LinkedIn and Reddit and Facebook and Instagram and even Twitter, they operate in these walled gardens. So you must log in typically to Facebook. You must log in to LinkedIn. And because you've logged in, you play in that walled garden as a consumer. And what those platforms do is they monitor your behavior within that platform. So if you're on Instagram and you like if you like one of Kimberly's posts on puppies or kittens that are available for adoption at the Humane Society, then you're probably going to see some more posts about puppies and kittens, right? That's kind of how that works. And so this is still on the table. You can still do this. And you might want to consider modifying your current digital media buy to kind of sway this way. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute, because that's still a process that can be utilized from internet marketing perspective. And then there's this idea, inter-network monitoring or internet advertising, essentially, in which we are monitoring how people behave on the web, like Facebook does, like Google does now, and go to Facebook and say, hey, Facebook, show me all the people that like dogs and cats and pet turtles and lizards and things like that. I want to promote my message to them, whether they've been on my website or not. And because Facebook has gathered all this information about these people from the websites they visited and all the posts that they see on the Facebook platform, they've got an audience for you, and you can promote your brand and your message to them. Is this going away? Not really, kind of, sort of, but not really. And we're going to talk about that in a second. Okay. So now that we understand, hopefully, the government regulations that we're up against, the technology changes that are underway or about to happen, let's talk through potential solutions. Okay, so here's how we solve these problems for ourselves as marketers. And again, I think looking at these through the prism of not only a consumer or a marketer, but a consumer rather, we're going to be in a better place if we get our act together. Some of these ideas are going to help us kind of get to a better place from an organization standpoint, how we deal with data. Okay, so the first idea is first-party data. You've probably heard this a lot lately, this three-letter word, first-party data. That basically is get more contacts, get more email addresses, get people to fill out your form, get people to subscribe for your newsletter, create customer accounts, gather survey data, build customer records that you can utilize to promote your message to people that know your name and are at least committed somewhat to provide some contact information. Okay. One idea is not just building a list or thinking about creating customer accounts or doing survey data, but this idea of interactive content. You've all seen this type of thing before, but just to give you an example, interactive content is helpful features on a website that provide some value exchange in exchange for contact information. So let me show you an example. Here's, I've got a kid who's thinking about college in a couple of years, right? So he doesn't know what he wants to do. Neither did I when I was 16, but we found this quiz online. It's like, all right, answer these 40 questions, which seems like a lot for a 16-year-old. And then we will provide you with a recommendation for what kind of major or topic or area of study that you should pursue. Okay, so my main issue with this is 40 questions is kind of a bit, but as you start to build this out, some of these majors, these programs will start to be bold or bright yellow. And once you finally get through all of them, they'll recommend environmental policy, apparently, is the one that I liked. And you can request information straight away. Now, here's the issue I've got with this particular instance. The idea is there. It's interactive content. It's providing some value exchange, right? I'm going to fill out this quiz. It's super helpful. Then it's going to give me some value. And then I'm going to provide my information in exchange for what? Well, they're saying fill out our request info form with, like, I'm not even showing you the entire form here, but it's like 16 to 20 fields. That's no fun at all. Can I first learn about what environmental policy is? Can I get a little bit more information about the potential jobs I might have, what the requirements at school would be? So in this case, the point here is that I think Loyola University is like skipping a step. You can absolutely provide interactive content, but know what the next feasible step should be so that you can lead that user down the funnel, down the sales funnel in a logical way, and not move from step 2 to step 22, right? Let's date before we get married a little bit. Let me learn more about you first, right? Here's a better example, in my opinion. Scott's has this amazing tool that kind of helps you fix your lawn, right? So you can answer this kind of interactive questions about what your lawn goals are, what your lawn looks like right now. And you can slide this back and forth and make it lush or really patchy, kind of give Scott's an idea of what kind of, where you live in the country and what you want your lawn to look like, what it looks now. And they will provide kind of a prescription for these different products, but they give you an option. They don't say sign up for the $186 a year annual subscription. That's kind of getting married. They say, let's date. How about a movie and some flowers first over here? I'll send you the recipe for what you might need and you can take it from there, but they're just asking for an email address. They're not asking for your first name or your phone number, just an email address, just a little baby step, just a tiny little commitment, right? So the idea here is utilize interactive content to build first-party data, but you don't necessarily need to ask for everything, right? You don't need to include every possible field that you could want. Just take what you need to survive, right? Here's another example of some interactive content. This is done with one of my clients up in Prescott, Arizona, a community called Talking Rock, which is like a golf real estate community. Now, one of the things they've got is they've got a contact form up here, and they've got a property update subscription where you can subscribe to email and they'll send you all the available properties that are available. And that works really well for them. The other thing that they've got are middle funnel actions like view floor plan and watch video and check out this brochure, etc., that aren't very high commitment, but they're also very good indicators for the brand that the consumer is interested. And so when someone clicks on the view floor plan for the Brody, which is my favorite floor plan, by the way, they get the PDF right away. There it is, immediate gratification. But in doing so, when they click, this brand says, oh, we got a live one here. We got somebody who's interested. Let's invite them to take the next step. So on click, they introduce a little form, looks like this. It says, hey, it looks like you're interested in floor plans. How about we just send the entire batch of floor plans to your inbox really quickly? A value exchange, convenience in exchange for email addresses. And they have collected hundreds of leads in this manner over the past few months. And it works really well. They're just asking a simple question, but they're not asking for the moon, right? Just get the name, postal code, and email address. And I actually think they're asking for too much right here. All they really need is the email address, right? Okay, so those are examples of interactive content. Now, back on the intra-app targeting growth, I think we all know what this means, but just to kind of provide you an example, here's what intra-app targeting growth means. And this isn't going away. This is here to stay. So I think it might be important to kind of study up on this a little bit because you might want to shift some more of your dollars or some of your dollars in this way. So let's say I watch a video about Maui travel guide or Hawaiian travel, right? Because I watched that video, YouTube knows that we've got a traveler who's interested in going to Hawaii. So let's provide them ads for the Four Seasons and a skippable video ad, for maybe a rental car company and a non-skippable video ad, and some swimwear from Quicksilver in a display ad. So based upon my behavior within this app, I can target people according to that behavior, okay? And this is not just possible within YouTube, but it's possible with all these networks as well. Okay, so that might be somewhere where you want to shift some dollars or at least do some more research about how to utilize that type of marketing and media outreach. Now, Google has been trying very hard to come up with an idea that will replace retargeting, right? So the idea where people come to the website, they leave, but we still want to bring them back and encourage them to revisit our website. And one of the ideas that has been floated out has been called FLOC, Federated Learning of Cohorts. That's an ugly name, right? And a cohort is just a group of people, but here's how FLOC is working. And it's just a proposal. Like, they haven't really actually enacted it yet. This is one potential idea that they've got to replace remarketing or retargeting as we know it. So again, this is just a proposal to potentially replace third-party cookies by Google. And it organizes audiences into clusters. So as opposed to looking at individual people who come to a website, they look at a group or an aggregate number of people separated by interest. And based upon the websites that we visit, they categorize them not by website, but by interest. So every website kind of has a grouping or a topic, let's say, that they're categorizing. And then based upon who's come to certain types of websites, you can target people who come to like lawn care websites or real estate websites or travel websites, etc. The thing about it is that they're still tracking us, right? So like, here's the different groups and the federated learning of different cohorts that they've got. And so it's supposed to be better or not really break the rules of third-party tracking, because it's not necessarily based upon the specific website I visited as a consumer, but the type of website, but they're still monitoring us. So in the process of putting this deck together for you, they killed this idea. It's done, right? But I wanted to bring it up because it's a description and a demonstration that Google hasn't figured this out yet. They're still trying to figure it out, okay? They have come up with another idea though, and it's kind of similar. So let's say we've got an audience that goes to the Home Depot website, okay? And there's a lot of things you can buy at Home Depot, like home improvement stuff, construction and power tools. You can buy flowers, lamps. So in this idea, this topics API, this is Google's next iteration of retargeting that they're working on right now as an experiment. They're assigning different topics to the websites we visit. And then when we leave those websites and go someplace else on the internet, those topics that are attached to the websites we visit are now attached to us. And so when we want to target people who are interested in flowers, let's say if we're a florist, we can do that. Again, it's still in development. It still kind of relies upon some third-party tracking, which is interesting, which I'm not sure how this is going to work. But the browser stores the topic data. Users have control over their topics, not unlike the big screen of topics I showed you at the start of this deck. And then data about specific sites visited is no longer stored and shared, just their topic. So they're not capturing the site name, but the topic detail. So I'm kind of skeptical about this and its long-term legs, but we'll see how it goes. One of the other things you might have seen for those who do work in both Google Ads and Facebook are these new products or new programs that both Google and Facebook has. Google calls theirs enhanced conversions. Facebook calls its conversion API. The commonality here is that when I'm working with Google, I can send data to Google, like an email address, or if I'm working with Facebook and I'm capturing conversions, I can send that data to Facebook to basically confirm that I've got a conversion. And this basically allows me to send data to these entities, and they can say, yep, that came from us, or yep, that came from that ad, or that came from that campaign, or this particular ad placement. And so it's allowing us to basically send data to these behemoth advertising networks so they can confirm whether our ads are working or not. Okay, and so the way that they've described this is it's going to improve tracking accuracy, optimize advertising campaigns, and reduce cost per action, which is probably all true. But the conspiracy theorist in me kind of thinks that they're having us send our data to them so they can also inform the profile data that we have for all their other advertisers, if that makes sense. So I definitely think you should look into this. A number of my clients already have these in place and they're working just fine. But this is kind of a way for Facebook and Google to kind of skirt around the third-party aspect. And so we gather first-party data and then send it to Facebook or Google, if that makes sense. Okay, so one of the pieces of this that Google has touted is that the fact that they're not actually gathering email addresses, they're taking email addresses and then hashing them. And hashing means they're converting them into this alphanumeric combination. So they're a unique identifier, but they're not actually gathering the email address, okay? And for the nerds in the room, the algorithm they're using is the SHA 256 algorithm to hash that data as it comes through, okay? So this is active right now. It's a legitimate way to market and track your Google and Facebook ads campaigns, but I would check it out. That's basically the recommendation I've got for you there. The other idea that is being bandied about is this idea of clean rooms. I know we're limited on time here, so I'm gonna jump ahead to the end here so we can take some questions. But clean room is not necessarily for advertising or marketing. It's more for analysis. So in this clean room example, we have, this bubble is us. We have email addresses for contacts and customers that we have gathered information for. And over here, we've got some network. Let's say it's Google, and they have all this profile data about people who utilize their service. And we want to basically have these two worlds collide so we can match up email address data from us with profile data from them. And they can provide us back with insights saying, hey, it looks like the people that convert are this type of quality or this type of person or access these types of websites or match up with this demographic. So they gave us really good detail about the people that convert so we can fine tune our programs to target more people like the people that convert, right? So they basically fill out a lot of information that we might not have about our conversions and where they come from, what they do, and where they go on the internet, so we can find more like-minded folks like them. An example of a clean room is the Google Ads Data Hub. It's brand spanking new. Google's kind of come out with it over the past year, but essentially they take all of their data from ads and DV360 and YouTube and all these gigantic networks, and they pair it up with our email data, and then they provide insights, okay? So that's the hope of the clean room idea. It's not necessarily providing us a better way to market. It's providing us with insights to educate our next marketing strategy. Okay, so I'm going to skip ahead here. I had some notes about customer data platforms, which I would check out as well. But at the end here, and I can cover this too, I can go back to the customer data platforms, but I did want to leave some time for questions here. This link is the one that I shared earlier. So if you arrived late or didn't get a chance to write that down, here it is. Once again, this deck will be included at this link. And I've also included a checklist of items to kind of prepare you for what's coming this year and also next year from a consumer privacy standpoint. Okay, so feel free to utilize those. That's me.
Great.
I'm gonna open up to questions now.
Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
Again, a wealth of information, and Taylor does have some questions.
Yeah, so one question we do have here is, do the rules also apply to, B2B, business to business, or is it really just B2C? Because you mentioned a lot about consumers and not so much business. So if you are truly just a B2B business, how much are you concerned about these updates, and do we need to focus on this?
Yeah, so when I use the word consumer, I'm talking regardless of B2B, B2C, nonprofit. This applies to everybody who does marketing in 2022. So the concerns for the B2C side are similar or equal to B2B and vice versa, or should be.
Great.
And then is it trackable to see the percentage of people who are saying like, yes, I do want to be tracked versus no, I'm opting out of being tracked on your site?
It is, yeah. So with those cookie platforms, they give you data about who said yes and who said no. It's basically a counter. You can't see who did and who didn't, but it basically provides some analytics on whether the no, don't track me box or the yeah, fine, allow cookies box was clicked. The data is limited so far, but what I've seen is that it's interesting, those in the US are less likely to accept than those in the European Union, where the law actually exists.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so, and it's actually pretty hopeful for us. The numbers aren't terrible. It's not like 7% of people are allowing cookies. It's more like 70 and 80% are allowing cookies. That's with the limited data that I've seen, but I'm sure that picture will become much more clear as more people adopt some of these consent platforms over time.
Excellent. And then, was the removal of the third-party cookies spurred more by, the new laws, or was it Google, or was it both? Or, what do you think really caused that?
That's a great question. I think there's two reasons why someone would change this. One is that they've got a good conscience and they care a lot about consumers and the consumer privacy aspect of this whole thing. And two is they're getting pressure from the government. I'll let you decide which one is the more motivating factor for some of these big companies. I think it's the latter one.
Yeah. Okay, I think we are good. Just one kind of a question, Chris.
Yeah.
It seems to me like I feel like I'm constantly answering that, are you okay with cookies, whenever I go to a site. Is it more companies seem to be doing that than not, or just not really a way to know?
In terms of the percentage of the people that have those consent platforms already installed?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a wave that's coming for sure. So you've definitely probably seen more in January of 2022 than you did January 2021.
Got it.
I'm guessing, right? So I would expect more of that to happen.
Yeah.
And in this sheet here, one of the recommendations that I have for you is to get consent. I don't think it's a bad move right now to get on this train in terms of asking for permission.
Right.
Partly because it's the right thing to do, in my opinion, and partly because it's going to be part of the law sooner or later. It's just headed that way.
Chris, I see a question just came in. Have you
Yeah.
heard any legal cases against sites not actively displaying cookie acceptance forms?
I haven't. Are there some out there? Yeah. There's this is definitely happening for sure. There haven't been too many high profile. It's been kind of a slap on the wrist for most folks who haven't gotten their act together just yet.
Mm-hmm.
But in Europe, there's a lot going on right now, particularly in Austria and France. This is probably a whole different 1 hour conversation, but there's some discussions about whether or not Google Analytics is legal in those countries, because the data that's being collected by Google Analytics is being sent to servers in Mountain View, California, which is in the United States, which is outside of Austria and France, et cetera, et cetera. So they're actually kind of wondering whether Google Analytics is legal in those countries.
Gotcha.
But to answer your question a long way, there have been some cases for sure. From what I've seen and the limited research that I've conducted, it's been kind of like a, hey, get your act together type of a move, as opposed to huge fines being levied. Yeah.
Gotcha. And first party cookies are staying put?
Staying put.
Okay. All right, great. I think that's all we have then for questions. So Chris, thank you. Again, I always rely on you to give me a bunch of information on stuff I don't know, but should know. So thank you. This was really great. And again, everybody, you'll be able to get this presentation, but I'll send this link to you in the email that I sent last night to everybody, so you have it. And the recording will be available, so you'll be able to look at that as well. And Chris, I want to thank you once again for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time being here with us again, and hopefully we'll be seeing you in person very soon, but thank you.
Absolutely. I look forward to that for sure.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for coming.
Yeah, thanks everybody for joining us. And just real quick, one last time, want to thank our sponsors. So again, if you need video, please give Taylor Wellman a call, and thanking our sponsor Prism Global Marketing Solutions, because she was here on the webinar with us. Keep an eye out on Spectrum Awards emails, because again, we will start collecting Inc., Calling Media, and Ideas Collide. And we thank our board members once again. And we are firming up our February 23rd speaker and also our March 10th speaker. We think we have our March 10th speaker. We are going to be talking about user-generated content and what it is, how to create it, your goals, how to distribute it, and all that good stuff. So that would be March 10th and March 23rd. So again, February 23rd, we are working on confirming that. So just keep an eye on email and our website for all of that. And everyone, thank you very much for joining us. Have a great rest of your Thursday, and we will be seeing you soon. Bye.